convention's role. And I would submit that we would need to review some video evidence to find out if, in fact, the original role was certified with the original Credentials Committee report.
I got a point of information on that.
State your point.
Okay, it was not verified. It was not verified according to the convention rules. So, the delegate count that they said was good is wrong.
It was never certified credential report.
Same thing here.
My point of information.
We assume that
Hold on, one at a time, guys.
It was a stated opinion of the previous chair of Credentials that the list was compromised, its integrity was compromised, and so I would move that it is not, and we never voted on the revised version, so it cannot stand.
So are you moving to reconsider the credentials?
I would move to strike any previously voted on credential reports and resubmit the credentials from this convention.
Friendly amendment. Inasmuch as your motion suggests that all the credentials report is invalid, I would suggest that without the proper credentials, all business of the convention up to this point would also be invalid, and therefore would suggest your motion to strike would be all business conducted in this convention within the building up to this moment, without proper credentials being established.
What was the evidence that the credentials was
The admission of the chair of
The admission of the chair of credentials that they.
So our credentials, then we create a new quorum.
Okay.
We create an actual
So on the
quorum.
basis that the credentials role itself was improper.
The fact that she got up and said our credentials are no good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we have
6
video.
times.
Point.
Yeah.
State your point.
What constitutes certification of the credentials of the convention earlier?
The point of information is a question of what constitutes the certification of the credentials. And I would defer to the parliamentarian for opinion.
That would be the vote of the convention.
Okay, the parliamentarian advised me that it would be the vote of the convention.
Only within the rules of the party.
Within the rules of the party.
Point of information that I still have access to the actual registration that we did this morning, so if there's any credentials in question, I can make that legitimate based on what we did this morning, the credentials report that was printed from their database.
Okay, well taken. State your point.
Point of information was, even though the roll call wasn't taking place for any of the stuff that was done, it can't be a majority vote if it is stood up or said aloud, but that itself has to be voted upon. That you can stand up and the majority will be taken. And that was never the case. It was always appointed as that was a rule. And that's not a rule, especially when we made the rules that it has to be done by roll call. So the only one that actually stuck as a rule is this sheet. That's all we have.
Yeah, but I would also say that if credentials weren't certified correctly and admitted by the credentials chairman, then none of the business, like you said, would be correct at that point.
Yes.
So,
There is a motion on the floor.
My point of order has to do with the credential delegates. I believe we have people on the list that do not have the badges. If so, we're going to have to do a recount on anybody that's on the list that's not credentials. If we're going to accept this as our credentials.
the chairman asked for everybody to count that had credentials.
But do we verify what that meant?
Well, that would be up to each county chairman to have done so properly,
So should we,
or delegation chairman.
Okay. State your point. Question. Point of information.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, for documenting sake. All business.
Credentials from the last meeting were invalid. Therefore, the actions of the last meeting were invalid.
I'm not making a motion on the floor.
All right. If that's true, then we base the credentials for this meeting on the credentials of the last.
Not exactly.
No.
Not if they're invalid.
Exactly. He actually said who's here with credentials. These people got their credentials from the last.
Credentials.
When I say credentials, I mean your name
Credentials
badge.
roll up from
Yeah,
county.
we're talking about. But
Something
if
as simple as this.
you invalidate them, then
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
These pieces of papers aren't been validated. But
I have a point of
the
order that has
certification.
preceded all other orders.
Say your point.
I move that we put the camera in front of anyone making any motions or any arguments for documenting sake. We need to have a clear and concise documentation of what's been said and discussed, so I Just like to put that out there.
We do have a motion on the floor, and I'd love to entertain your motions just after this
Point
one.
of information, please restate the motion.
Okay, the motion is to, please restate your motion, Toby.
My motion, and I'll let Richard add the amendment again, is that we strike the business from this day and strike the credentialing from the previous convention as it was stated on camera and at that convention that the credentials were invalid and that we never had the ability to vote on the revised credentialing.
Jennifer-friendly amendment. And to suggest a previous convention rather than a continuation thereof is to invalidate to some degree our current actions. What I believe your intention is to suggest is that the business of that convention was never properly carried forth because of the failure to accept credentials properly, and from that then it is proper for us to carry forth and create that original necessary thing, which is to accept credentials. Now, accepting credentials would not infer a piece of paper we hold. This was properly the work of the Credentials Committee, whose report is yet to be accepted by this same convention, which has moved from one part of this property to another.
Yes. I'll second that motion.
So can you state your motion as amended?
Yes. Restate as amended?
Yes. It's going to be tough to do.
Please.
Might I suggest?
Yes.
Order.
Okay. His motion is to strike all actions of the convention up until the time in which the convention moved its location to the outdoors, due to the fact the credentials were never properly ratified by the convention, and thus no business would be proper.
Okay, I'm going to restate the question for everybody that can hear me. There is a motion to strike all business that has conducted up to the point that we moved outdoors due to the fact that the credentials report was never properly certified or ratified or adopted by the convention.
Point of information.
Point of information, state your point.
Are we arguing that the credentials report was never accepted by the convention, or that the credentials report was accepted but is erroneous? Those seem to be two different things to me.
The motion entails that the credentials report was never certified or ratified as amended after they amended it 6 times.
Yes.
So they amended it on the fly without a motion to actually...
Exactly.
That's correct.
Without the proper ratification.
But in that case, would it not be simply those amendments that would be invalid, and then you would roll back to the credentials report that was originally accepted?
There was not a motion to accept a portion of credentials, credentialing that smaller group, and that would have been proper to say, okay, we've got 1,500 people here. It wasn't divided. It was one continuing and evolving credentials report, the final evolution thereof having never been accepted.
And I have one more point of information. If in fact the credentials report was invalid, why is it necessary to strike the business of the convention? Because that business, it simply was not conducted if there was not a proper permanent roll of delegates in presence.
The premise would be to strike from the record business that was indeed not properly conducted.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and it has been seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Do you have a good reading of that motion?
I would submit.
Can you help him with that?
Yeah.
We still have a point of information.
Point of information.
We have it on tape.
We strike the Credentials Committee's report, and we need to have all of our voter cards so that we can be accounted correctly to our county, so that when we go to wherever we're going to the national convention, we can show that we're a legitimate group that was elected by our county as delegates. And you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If we strike the credentials, won't we have to sign up per person and identify every person here on a roll call sheet?
Yes.
That is up to your county.
I would probably agree with you there.
At the end, you would collect all these things.
What?
At the end, you would collect all these things.
Is there anybody here that does not have their